Hello, and welcome to Nosotros, the podcast about Mexican-American history, politics, cultura, y más, brought to you in part by the Gomez Law Firm. I'm your host, Elaine Ayala, Metro columnist for the San Antonio Express News. My guest today is State Senator Roland Gutierrez, who has served District 19 in the Texas Senate since 2021.
That's right.
And formerly served in the Texas House of Representatives from 2008
That's right.
to 2021. Last year, he ran unsuccessfully in the Democratic primary, correct? In hopes of ousting Republican Ted Cruz from the U.S. Senate. I would have liked to have seen that race.
Yeah, so would I. I got accused of so much in that last session, and I'm not playing demographic politics, if you will. But I think that it is time to see another Latino or Latina run statewide.
Yes.
And I think that you'll see a different outcome. Primarily, and some people said, well, that guy's, Gutierrez is too progressive. He's too far left.
I would say you're moderate.
I'm pretty moderate. I'm pretty moderate on fiscal issues.
You're not crazy.
Not crazy. I just don't want to see, I don't want to see any more dead kids. We need to fix that. Wouldn't mind legalizing cannabis because most states have already. Mm-hmm. It helps our veterans. It helps, kids that are having, all sorts of seizures and problematic problems like that. Every state that's done it hasn't increased in usage, but 1 percentage point. I'd like to see, obviously, Medicaid expansions. I'd like to see women's rights be respected, reproductive health rights. We are living in a place in Texas where these people are just crazy. These Republicans in office are just crazy.
Okay. Before we get to questions, because I have lots of them, I always play a game of rapid fire questions like this or that, but I changed it for you.
Too early in the morning.
This time we're going to do a game where you just think of the first word that comes to mind. And you can always elaborate after a little bit, but just first word. And you can use English, Spanish, or Spanglish.
All right, fair enough.
The unvaccinated.
Tontos.
I know, right? She said tontos.
Yeah.
Which is in English, dumb.
Yeah, it's just dumb. It's absolutely dumb. And now we're starting to see it happen,
Absolutely.
One death reported. I think another one's been reported now in Texas.
And our first case in the San Antonio area.
That's right.
If not probably.
Vast majority of people unvaccinated that have, it's just nuts.
Yeah. Elon Musk.
Pendejo. Worse than that. I can't say the words that I want to say against Elon Musk. Traitor, un-American, not an American, we know that, South African, racist, so many words.
Donald Trump.
Racist, crazy lunatic. Not one word, sorry.
Vouchers.
Idiotic.
New Spurs Arena.
New Spurs Arena. I'm okay with it. I think we need to keep the Spurs.
Favorite pan dulce.
My kids love conchas. I have to stay away because I'm putting on weight.
Okay. And I do have one this or that. Well, maybe two. Bernie Sanders or AOC? Young or old?
That's tough. I like AOC. I like them both. But AOC's on the rise, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Corn or flour?
Definitely corn.
Okay, you're watching your...
Oh, yeah.
All righty. Who's leading the Democratic Party now?
In Texas or in the United States?
Both. Who's leading?
We've got work to do. We have leaders that lead us in the House and the Senate. Just like Washington, we're a little bit divided. Some of us are, I do consider myself kind of a middle of the road kind of Democrat, but on a lot of social issues, one would say I'm pretty progressive.
AOC, you would say you're a social democrat.
Likely. And that's okay. I was born and raised to care about people.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Democratic Socialist.
Democratic Socialist. That's okay.
Same thing.
That's okay. Listen, I was raised to care about people, and I was raised to adhere to the golden rule. And I think that if we all did that, Democrats and Republicans, this country would be fine. We'd all be helping each other. And that hasn't happened in a long time in this country, and it keeps deteriorating over time. And so I really believe that. My father used to tell me when I would, as a little boy, and I would complain in school about some other kid, and some other kid had this, or had this nice new set of pants, or parachute pants, or whatever it was. And I would cry to my dad, I want some.
Love to see that, Roland. Let's get an archive picture of that.
Well, I never had them.
Oh.
He would tell me, he says, because we didn't have the money for that kind of stuff, he would say, ellos no me pagan los biles. Those people don't pay my bills. I'm only concerned about you. Mm-hmm. Or when I would, compare myself to someone else, or compare their lives to mine. And so there seems to be in the Republican Party in Texas and in the United States a lot of theism, a lot of it's them, not us. Man, I mean, it's nuts. Just mind your own business, do your own thing, and we'll all be well, and take care of your neighbor. Because if you do that, if you're kind to people, we'll be okay. But there's just no leadership in this country anymore from that perspective. On our side, yeah, some people are more moderates. In Austin, some people say, oh, Roland's not getting anything done. Well, I put more amendments last Senate than any other Democrat in the House, but I'm not here comparing myself to them. My job right now is to put down the madness of Greg Abbott and try to quash it, try to stop it, the madness of Dan Patrick, the madness of, Burrows, and say, look, this stuff doesn't make sense where I can. And the only way I can do that is by amendments. Yesterday, they killed an amendment to support our veterans on their crazy lottery bill. The week before, on vouchers, Menendez put a pre-K amendment that they killed. Great amendment. I put an amendment that said, look, these vouchers are stupid because they only help a few kids in Texas. But if we're going to do that, let's have a scholarship program. Let's just take that $10,000, create a college scholarship program. That way rural Texans can also...
Good idea.
Yeah. I mean, Menendez's amendment was great. My amendment was good. We've got to be able to box these people in the corners. They voted against that. They voted against teachers yesterday or day before yesterday. They want to kill
public schools.
Oh, yeah. Look, 2 days ago, they did their quote-unquote teacher pay bill. Well, let's not forget, these guys are the ones that held our teachers hostage 2 years ago and retained $5 billion in the budget because Greg Abbott didn't get his vouchers. So teachers didn't get a pay raise, right? And so we come fast forward to 2 days ago, we're going to do the teacher pay raise. And they say, we're not going to hold it hostage. We're not going to do one for the other this time. But then the raise is only $4 billion. I had an amendment because they added some ridiculous piece about liability insurance. I added an amendment to give every teacher a $1,000 bonus to pay for their auto insurance because auto insurance has gone up.
Ridiculous.
50% in the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. How do we do that? Mm-hmm. How do working class families, how are they able to afford anything, Elaine? Mm-hmm. It's incredible. And so I don't think that we're going to pass any earth-shattering bills in the Democrats in the House and the Senate. That's not what I'm there for right now. Right now, I've got to stop the madness as best I can.
Describe the worst and best case scenarios of Abbott's vouchers. And so this is a two-parter. Since we're also likely to see cuts or a complete elimination of the U.S. Department of Education, together, what are the best, worst scenarios?
I don't see any best, but I'll try that in a minute.
Or maybe less worse.
Well, we'll get there. It's a $1 billion program. That's a lot of money, still, a lot of money. A $1 billion program that only helps 100,000 kids. There are 5.5 million kids in our schools. So 100,000 win the lottery. 80% were supposedly in the poverty level area. Well, they defined poverty level at $160,000 per family. That's hardly poverty.
No.
That's hardly poverty.
They need to come to the West Side and see what poverty is.
That's right. So our kids aren't going to get in. Let's be really clear. I cross-examined Brandon Creighton. I said, well, wait a minute. TEA says there's only 25,000 available seats. So that means that the balance of this will, it's a legal term, is cheat down, will fall down to your other category, the people that are already in private schools. So 75,000 seats will go to kids that are already sitting in private school. Mm-hmm. What kind of a scam deal is that? So those families,
and you went to a private school,
and that's the thing that Abbott likes to put out. Well, Roland went to private school.
Central Catholic.
This other person went to private school. Well, guess what? My immigrant parents wanted me to have a parochial education, and that's fine. That was their decision, but they never asked you to pay for it, did they?
No.
My immigrant parents were told by an old judge named Mike Machado. I love Judge Mike, and he's passed on. And he said, look, you got to send your kids to Central Catholic. And that's why we went there. All of my brothers. And my father struggled completely to do it.
Oh, I bet.
But we're all better for it, sure. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't have had an equal as good education as Jefferson. But we never asked the government to pay for it. And now, and it would be fine if you gave it to all 5.5 million kids like they do in Vermont. Mm-hmm. But that's not what this voucher deal is. It's a straight up lottery where rural kids absolutely get screwed over.
And they have no private schools to choose from.
None.
They all have to homeschool, and that's going to be horrific.
Well, even then, there's only 100,000 that win that magic lottery. And so for people, the 75,000 people that already have made that decision and are paying for their kid to go to school, well, they just got a bonus at my expense. So they can buy a new BMW, go to Europe if they wanted to this summer, or get a pretty nice tax refund, if you will. And that's simply not fair. It's just not fair. It's far from equitable. It's lunacy.
And I can't help to think that they're looking at the numbers and the great, great majority of Latino students that are in public schools and cannot afford anything else.
Yeah, that's right. You know, our kids, that's the other piece to this thing. Those same private schools can reject who they want. They don't offer the same resources as our public schools when it comes to disabled kids, special needs kids. They don't offer the same busing or cafeteria services. And the most specific question, I said, well, listen, we just had Uvalde happen, a few years ago. We spent $111 million, more than we ever have, on public safety for schools. Are these private schools going to be subject to that? And the answer was no. So they're not even subject to the protections of the School Safety Commission, which, by the way, aren't great, but at least it's something. And those schools have nothing. So we have to have a real discussion with ourselves about Greg Abbott and what this is truly about. And it really is about paying back some billionaires that have given him a tremendous amount of money that want to see this happen.
And these billionaires want to see vouchers because?
Listen, America needs to wake up. Billionaires are about one thing, and that's making more money and more power for themselves. And they are a few of them are extending themselves into places that they shouldn't be in, like Elon Musk. We've seen that, like Wilkes over there, and the other guy, Ferris Wilkes, and Dunn up in Midland, like this Yaz guy. We've got to be able to ascertain what this is about, and it's about the privatization of our schools. When you monetize public education, imagine that. If you could monetize 5.5 million kids, and if you controlled just 10% of that, and we've seen this before with charters, and by the way, some have performed greatly and some haven't. And so, same as our public school system. This is real simple. Public education in Texas has been run by these people for 30 years. These people being the Republicans, they've been in charge for 30 years. And yet they say, well, our kids can't read until the third grade level. Well, that's okay. It's not okay. But here's the deal. If you paid for pre-K, I promise you they'd read. If we took this billion and took just one other billion, and you did that, we would have universal pre-K in this state, and kids would be reading. But they don't care about universal pre-K. They don't care about it.
Thank goodness we have pre-K for SA in San Antonio.
That's right. Absolutely correct. We have to be able to do things that make sense. And every study out there tells you if you do pre-K, your kids will be reading in the first grade.
They'll be ahead.
And yet these guys have failed to do that basic thing over and over again. And I can only think it's to privatize schools, to monetize things, because we've seen it in our prison system.
In our immigration detention system.
Immigration detention.
Very lucrative.
Look what he's doing with Operation Lone Star. Gave a $500 million no bid contract to a company run out of San Marcos. And she's basically does housing for the police officers. Now she's supposed to construct a $500 million base. They don't have any construction experience ever. But the bigger part is it's a no bid contract. Shouldn't that be going to, Zachary or other companies out there? Shouldn't people be allowed to bid on it?
Who might have some experience in it?
Yes. And so this is the space that we're living in with these people. It's about greed. It's about power. It's about money.
How did May 24th, 2022, the day a young mass shooter killed 19 children and 2 teachers at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, impact you? How does it continue to impact you?
Yesterday was hard. The families, a few of them were at the Capitol. And it was hard because it brings back those memories. I've gotten a lot better. I'll be okay. And those families will never be okay. The only thing that they have to look forward to is some duller sense of pain. But I've never seen anything like that in my life. And I was there pretty consistently for about 3 weeks straight until my wife said, you got to come home. And then I sued the government, which might have been the worst thing I'd ever done, because I lost the lawsuit. The media, you guys also sued them. I lost my lawsuit, but they said, hey, look, Senator, we've always said we'll show you everything. Just sign this non-disclosure agreement. And I did. And I regret it, and I don't. I needed to see it. And I don't think most elected officials ever see these things. But I saw all of that footage. I saw every kid dead in that room. I saw kids being dragged out by the leg that were killed. Little girl with no face. I see that little girl still yet. I see her every day in my mind, my mind's eye. I see all of the kids that were in a bus. I think you've seen some of that in the media, and the screams of horror as they were taken to the hospital. I've talked to those children that survived. Their parents are my friends. Children who didn't survive, their parents are now my friends. I see their little kids on Facebook, the wonder of Facebook. You see a little child alive, laughing, playing with her dogs. And I saw that little girl dead. And it does affect you in a real way. And it did affect me in a real way. And I think I'll be fine. I'm sure I will be. I've done some therapy.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, I did that. I don't do this anymore. I used to do this a lot. I've done some therapy. I had a veteran at about month 6 tell me, I was at an event, they invited me to talk about it. And a veteran comes up to me, says, you have PTSD. I couldn't keep it together at all then. I couldn't keep it together. It's the most amazing and horrible thing you've ever seen in your life. I don't know that we can. I'm going to keep trying to do something about this so that this doesn't happen again. I remember a conversation with Lieutenant Governor, and I hated to have him see any vulnerability with me, because he and I We kind of clash. And I'm sure he enjoyed every bit of it. But I was in his office, and I told him, this is going to happen to someone at the end of our meeting. Because I was telling him the story about that little girl, and I got a little emotional. And he said, how dare you tell me that? I said, it's going to happen to someone within some degree of separation to someone because of loose Republican gun laws, and they don't like to hear that. But it's the truth. We are here today. Here's the difference between Texas and Florida. So let's get into some facts. They had a mass shooting called Parkland. We're all well aware of it. And they came in under then Governor Rick Scott and created about 21 laws, interestingly enough. One of them, which was extreme risk protective orders. One of them was an age limit increase on AR-15s. Both those laws are still in place today in Florida, even though Republicans are now trying to repeal those things. Mm-hmm. Every Republican sheriff appreciates those laws, the extreme risk protective orders. They work. Hell, Pam Bondi, our new United States Attorney General, just said we need extreme risk protective orders. And Trump is now saying it, which is probably the only thing I've ever agreed with him on. They work. And they take guns away from people that are mentally ill, from people that shouldn't have them, from people that are making threats to others. And they take them away temporarily until someone says, okay, what's going on here? Mm-hmm. But we don't have that here. We have no such protection. Had some kid in a store said, hey, sheriff, this looks weird. This same kid has loaded up with ammo, loaded up with 2 guns here in the last 3 or 4 days. It was the same kid. It was the same clerk. Mm-hmm. They knew. But they didn't make a call to the sheriff. And even if they would have, the sheriff would have said, well, what do you want me to do?
Who's the leading person on the Republican side on this issue? Who would you call out?
The issue never gets to the forefront with them because they don't even get the bills out of committee. Last time, for the first time ever, we had an age limit because Uvalde was so fresh in our minds. We had a committee hearing held in the House under Tracy King's bill. And that didn't go beyond that. They don't want to talk about it, and they're not going to talk about it. They're all the leading. If you want to know who's stopping it from happening, it's very simple. It's Greg Abbott, it's Dan Patrick, it's just Dustin Burrows. I told him yesterday on the Senate floor when we did a resolution, I said, look, we can do a little bit here. We can do something that doesn't take people's guns away. No way a kid that's 18 years old should be able to access an AR-15. He can't buy a beer, and he can't buy a cigarette. And yet we let him buy an AR-15. Mm-hmm. It's astounding to me. And if they'd have seen the pictures I've seen, if they'd have seen that imagery.
That brings up my next question, and it's something that newspapers, media debate all the time about. We have access to a photo, but it's too explicit. It's too heartbreaking. It's just too much. But there are gun control advocates who say, parents from Parkland say, we need to see those to help push Republicans to do more on gun control. It would serve a means to an end.
You would hope in some way.
Well, you've seen them. So can we take it? Can we? I don't have to see them to know. When your description of that little girl is enough. But for some people, maybe that visual could turn the tide.
Maybe yes, maybe no. Emmett. I always tell people Emmett Till's mother was right on in what she did. She had to do it to show the world the brutality of what they did to her son.
Such courage.
And I know the Washington Post put a bunch of photos out. And that reporter got a tremendous amount of pushback from the families themselves. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of stuck in the middle because they're all friends. And so it just, they were upset by it. And I understand that. I do think that people need to see some things at times. But I also think Republican lawmakers need to listen to their constituents. 78% of Republican voters want to see that age limit increase. That's all we asked for. It was the first thing I said a couple days after, because I thought, well, surely we could do this.
Yeah, but gun makers don't like it, and the NRA don't like it, and therefore they get ordinary average Americans get ruled out.
We produce about 4 million of these weapons every year, and every year 2 million of them end up in Mexico.
Yes.
This is
which has very strict gun laws.
Well, it's hard to get a gun in Mexico. It's hard to get a license for a gun in Mexico. And yet we have, Trump wants to call out the cartels. We built the cartels. Let's be really clear. The United States armored the cartels. We did that. After the assault weapons ban, the cartels grew. After the assault weapons ban was lifted, the cartels became the cartels. That's who they are now because of that one moment in our nation's history.
Now I want to go back to politics a little bit. In the last general election, the November election, we saw places like Uvalde, places in South Texas turn even more Republican. Latinos voting for Trump. And I wonder what the political state of affairs is in places like that, and how you describe them, assess them.
I mean, look, I get it. I mean, they have migrants that at times are running through their backyards. I mean, I understand that. Yes. Those constituents also vote for me at quite a good click. When I talk to them, I tell them, look, I get that that's happening and that's horrible and it shouldn't happen. I understand that. We need to do better. The fact is, it's not happening as much as we're told. The border is not some chaotic war zone. Oh, it's a perception. I had a lady here in San Antonio, oh, be careful down there, because I'm in the Valley once a week. I'm in Laredo once a week. I'm in Eagle Pass every other week. And so, oh, be careful down there. It's fine. Nothing is going to happen to anyone in Laredo, Texas, or Eagle Pass, or El Paso, or McAllen. It's just not going to happen. There are not this horde of migrants coming over the fence. That doesn't happen. And so we have to have a real discussion about this. We need to fix and take it off the table, but nobody wants to fix immigration the way it should be. I mean, when I did run for the United States Senate, I had a plan. I am an immigration lawyer. I know how to fix this thing. Absolutely. And we need to. But now we're in a different world. We're in Trump's world, and we're going to, lie about these people. We're going to say that they're the scourge of the earth. We're going to go arrest them all, everyone that we can.
And I don't think that there's anyone on the Democratic or Republican side that doesn't want a criminal immigrant who has committed a crime, arrested, deported, imprisoned, whatever. We're all for that.
Yeah, no, fair enough. The fact is the numbers are so small, infinitesimally small. Every study will show you that criminal migrants are a lot less than Americans. There's a lot than actual U.S. citizens, U.S. resident criminals. The percentages, it's people don't come here to commit crimes. They come here to work. The vast majority of them do. And so they want to criminalize them more and say, oh, they trespassed. Well, that's a crime because they came into the U.S. That's a crime. And so that's where they're going with this new registration they want to do, which is ludicrous. Don't do it. No lo hagan.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, it really kind of just sets you up for deportation when you...
Yes, the roadmap of how to arrest you.
Yes.
And if you don't do it, well, now you're a criminal, right? And so when we do get you, well, that's a criminal. And so their stats go up and so on and so forth. Listen, we talked about this before the show. Our restaurants are hurting. Home Depot is hurting. Construction sites are hurting.
Panaderias are hurting.
Give it another 60 days and you're going to see more of it. And the sad part is that families are being separated. the vast majority of these people that they're getting the low-hanging fruit are not criminal aliens. I suppose that if you said that a migrant crossed the border is a criminal, well, okay, well, then I suppose that you can classify them in that area. These immigrants are people that are looking for an opportunity and a chance. And by the way, they're not taking anybody's jobs.
And the other thing, please speak to this, they're applying for asylum.
You're applying for asylum. A lot of TPS grantees are now being deported. That's temporary protective status are being deported. That's just simply not fair, right? They played by the rules. They showed up at the border. They asked for asylum. They said, I'm being, they
applied. They have lawyers. They're going to show up.
And unfortunately, they are shanghaiing people right now every day, and they don't, with impunity, and they do not care what's happening. These folks aren't taking anybody's jobs. They're doing the jobs that Americans don't want to do. And now you can ask every restaurateur how they're doing.
Yeah.
And they're going to tell you two things. Our workers are afraid to show up. That's number one. And people are afraid to come eat. I got a call from a beer distributor upset.
Because he's not selling enough.
Not selling enough beer. I said, you need to go talk to your friends over there on the other side, on the side of the aisle you vote for.
They're all the owners are Republican.
They are.
by I would guess.
They are. And we're the thinking kind. Okay, well, that's fine. Well, you voted for these crazy ones or your friends did. Because it's funny, I tell people Donald Trump's not a Republican. He's certainly a fascist. He's certainly a con artist. He's certainly a charlatan. He's far from a small C Republican, right? Small C conservative Republican. That's not Donald Trump. This guy's a showman. That's all about one thing. That's money for himself and his family and power.
Have you seen that video that showed up on Truth Social of
the Gaza?
Yeah. Trump Gaza and its resort?
Yeah, him and Elon Musk. I mean, these people, why doesn't that give you any pause to understand that this man is a lunatic? Just a lunatic.
What did you learn from running or attempting to run against Ted Cruz last year? What were the takeaways?
You better have enough money to win the Democratic primary.
Okay, fair enough.
My opponent had $17 million. You guys endorsed him. I still haven't renewed.
I had nothing to do with it.
I haven't renewed my subscription yet. I'm going to be honest. And I've got, I raised $1 million. Of course, he came out 2 months ahead of me. Look, I don't think that moderate wins the day in Texas. I don't think that being this kind of wanting to be this middle of the road Democrat, I do Republican stuff. I mean, look, the last guy was a nice guy, but he was on the same page on their immigrant policies that aren't working. And we need to fix immigration, and we can. We need to give everybody that's been here for the last 5 years or more, about 12 million people.
Yes, and some of them 20 years.
And they'd pay a fine, by the way.
And they pay taxes, and they contribute to Social Security that they'll never get.
Social Security they'll never get, so many on I-10s and so on. And so you can fix that. You can fix our visa system. You don't need to create this ridiculous golden visa. We already have one. No one's going to pay $5 million to live here or go anywhere. We have an EB-5 system that works. There's not 200,000 people waiting in line for it. It's just all lunacy. Anything that comes out of that man's mouth takes a shred of something and exploits it so much. Look, if we just all sat back a little bit and just said, hold on, just let's read the bill, let's read between the lines, you would see that the reason we need to do U.S. aid across the world is to quell the problems in those countries so that they don't become our problems. Mm-hmm. That's why we did it years and years ago. It's a fraction of our budget. And now we've destroyed people's lives. Donald Trump is destroying the lives of people. They bullied a poor little girl.
AIDS medication for babies.
AIDS medication for babies.
Yes, you were going to mention this poor child who took her own life.
Yeah, I mean, everything that this guy has done it's causing real pain to people. I was driving in, listening to the radio, a man working for USAID in Sudan. He doesn't even have a way to get back home. He says, I've been working in the Sudan for 30 years, trying to help people in the federal government. He was about to retire.
And he's stranded.
And he says, what we're doing here is such a small fraction of the U.S. budget. We're helping that poor little girl up near Dallas. She was bullied by kids that said, you're going to get deported. My point in bringing her up in this conversation is that Donald Trump and his cronies are causing real pain to American families. And if you don't believe me, just wait till the inconveniences begin to happen, because they've already begun. But when you Republicans that are out there listening and you want to go to the national park this summer, you're not going to be able to go to them with the same kind of frequency or get the same kind of services you've got there, because he cut 500 from the National Park Service. He cut people from Homeland Security. And I don't think that this idiotic president realizes that when you cut people at USCIS, United States Citizen and Immigration Services, they actually make money for us because people pay fees. People pay fees for their visas. And they kick money back into the U.S. budget. So they don't know what they're doing. I want to be very clear. They do not know what they are doing. When you don't have somebody that's ever worked in government, like Musk, like I dare say Trump, because he hasn't ever done anything.
And many of the cabinet members, some taken right out of network news.
Out of network news, don't have any real military experience like Hegseth. Just craziness.
Okay. 2 more issues.
Yeah.
I want you to talk about SB 76, the one that seeks to end county-wide voting. That is the ability to vote at any voting site that the county opens, thus making voting far more accessible than if you go to a predetermined precinct, which I see people when I gone to my precinct and I see people showing up and they're told you need to vote somewhere else. Back in the day. I love that our SAGE editorial board did use one word to describe the bill. Quote, stupid. What's the real intent here?
Well, the real intent is to diminish people's voting power, to cut the franchise to voting, right? Less people voting is good for Republicans. Less educated people, keeping people dumb is good for Republicans.
Hence vouchers.
Hence never paying for pre-K. It would take us 18 years to see the results of a real pre-K program. They don't even want to do that. There is a real dumbing down of America. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist when I say that. In red states, there is a dumbing down of their populations. And it's done intentionally so that these people can stay in power longer. The fact is, you can go down to South Texas and tell them, mira, los inmigrantes se están quitando el trabajo. They're taking your job away, the immigrants. But if people just really thought about it a little bit more, if they just understood a little bit more, if they read a little bit more, they'd understand, well, that's just nonsense. No immigrant is responsible for my lack of health care. No immigrant is responsible for my inability to be able to pay for my college, for my kids' college. No immigrant is responsible for the fact that my daughter doesn't have the same reproductive freedoms that she would have in other states. Those are not the faults of immigrants. The electric grid that went down and killed 800 people in this state, that wasn't an immigrant's fault. That was Gray Abbott's fault. He left the emergency power switch on for 36 hours so his friend could make an extra $1.5 billion in Kelsey Warren. This is real highway robbery happening, real corruption here happening in our state, real corruption.
It just doesn't look like Bonnie and Clyde anymore.
No. I mean, no one's got a gun to your head. It's just, it's chicanery, right? It's stuff that they can get away with because they're in power.
Well, Senator, I'm really sorry you never dropped an F-bomb during this. I guess I should thank you.
My wife says I can't anymore.
Oh, okay. But I do want to go to one-word answer. And I take it from a very good source in this building, said a word or a phrase about your driving ability and habits, because you drive back and forth every day, which I can't imagine.
Yeah.
What's the word you would put to describe your driving?
I think it's great. It's great.
Okay.
I wonder who this is because,
someone has seen you driving and called it on the nicer word was aggressive.
No. Although yesterday I did tell my staff that was driving up with me, I like to drive. I did tell them I wanted to be a NASCAR driver.
Oh God. Okay, there you go. That's the description I was waiting for. Okay. Thank you so much for visiting us on Nosotros, Senator Gutierrez.
Thank you, Elaine.
You can watch the video version of Nosotros on YouTube or get it and everywhere else you get your podcasts. My Metro column appears every Wednesday and Friday in the San Antonio Express News. And if you want to reach me, my email address is eayala@express-news.net. And thanks so much for listening. See you next time on Nosotros.